This is a breaking news video. As you can tell, I was not planning to tape today, but I just couldn't put this off any longer. I have something I have to tell you right away. Welcome to Web of Stories. My name is Melinda. I am coming to you on Thursday, September 21st. I plan to have this video out as soon as I possibly can because this cannot wait any longer. Clearly, I did not mean to tape today. I don't have makeup on, but something happened. For only the fourth time this year, I read a 5-star book, and I just can't wait to share it with you. So, I don't do 5-star predictions. I don't even do 4.5-star predictions because I always feel like I'm jinxing myself. I do actually like watching other people do them though. But anyway, if I did do them, this would have been a 5-star prediction book. But what the surprise is how much I liked it. So the book is The River We Remember by William Kent Krueger. If you have been watching my channel for any amount of time, you know that I am a William Kent Krueger stan. I have read his entire Cork O'Connor series, which I believe is 18 books, 18 or 19 books. There's quite a few. I have read I have listened to his audio novella called The Levy. And I have read all of his standalones so far. His first one was Ordinary Grace, which won the Edgar Award. His second was This Tender Land, which I read last summer. And then just like a week and a half ago, he released The River We Remember. Yeah, so definitely this was going to be a 5-star. By the way, there is one William Kent Krueger work I still need to read. It's called like The Devil's Bed or something like that. It's a thriller that he wrote. I think he was trying to start another series, but then he didn't. I have it on my Kobo. Once I read that, I'm a completist. I had this pre-ordered right away. I knew I needed it. There was no question. So once I got it, and once I finished the book I was reading, because Clytemnestra took me a while, I picked this one up and I could not put it down. Let me give you a little summary of it. So I wrote this out so it kind of makes some sense. So let me read it. In early summer 1958, the remains of the richest resident of Jewel, Minnesota are found in the Alabaster River. Despite the wishes of the sheriff, Brody Dern, it is deemed a murder, and the immediate suspect among many people in town is Noah Bluestone, a Dakota Sioux man with a Japanese wife. To solve the mystery, the secrets of the town and its residents will need to come to life. That's all I'm going to say about it. I don't want to go into too many details. It's a mystery. Obviously, someone dies. I got to figure out what happens, right? You'd think, of course, that's a mystery. But there's so much more to this book. So much more. There are a lot of characters in this book, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but I did want to highlight 3 characters that I felt were very important to the story, that really had like the most important viewpoints from where I read it. The first is Brody Dern, who's the sheriff. So this is set in 1958. A lot of the characters came back from World War II and the Korean War, and he is a World War II vet. Some pretty horrible things happened in World War II, and he has sort of the scars on his soul from those. But he's also the sort of person who has a need to protect. And he takes his role as sheriff very seriously in the eyes of protecting the town. And the town, clearly from the summary, there's a murder involved. But you also see the other crimes this town deals with is like, a drunk guy urinated in front of a store and someone stole someone's pickup. So murder's not really his thing. That's not the kind of crime you usually see in this town. So he's sort of at the center of this. He has a very conflicted life in a lot of ways. And then there is Charlie, or Charlotte Bauer. So Charlie is a native of Jewel, Minnesota, but she left as a young woman and went out, became a lawyer. She worked what we would kind of call like social justice work nowadays, but she worked with like the interned Japanese, the migrant workers in California. She was in California. So when she retired, she came back to her hometown of Jewel. And even though she's retired, she still takes cases on now and then. And she does, this is not really a spoiler because it's pretty obvious, she gets called on to defend Noah Bluestone. And then the third character that I really think was sort of a central character was a teenage boy named Scott Madison. So Scott Madison is, in so many ways, just sort of your all-American kid. He is a good kid. His father died before he was born. He died in World War II. So he's raised by his mother and his paternal grandparents, and they run the town diner. And he has a friend. He's like one good friend in town, and this kid comes from kind of a rough part of town, or has a rough life, and so Scott tries to keep him straight and narrow. And Scott is such a good kid, but he has a hole in his heart. Medically speaking, there is a heart defect, and so he feels really contained. You know, his mother's very protective of him, but he also knows his limits. He feels very trapped within his limits, and he comes up to play a part in all this. That's really all I'm going to say about that, because again, this is a historical fiction because it's set in 1958, but it's also a literary mystery. And because it's a literary mystery, I'm trying to be really careful about what I say about it. So let me go what I liked about it. I loved the writing in this book. William Ken Krueger is an interesting author in that he has written 20 some, maybe, yeah, he's written over 20 books. And every book he writes, there's an improvement. Like, he didn't start low. It's not like he started as a bad writer and got better. His first book, Iron Lake, is fantastic. I mean, he started great and he just kept getting better. And you can really see just so much. This book is just that much better than the other books he's written. I want to read now because, again, this is a literary mystery. I don't want to spoil anything. I was trying to find something to read that wouldn't spoil anything. So I'm going to read from the prologue, which is very short. It's one page. I may actually just read the prologue. So here we go. The Alabaster River cuts diagonally across Black Earth County, Minnesota, a crooked course like a long crack in a china plate. Flowing out of Sioux Lake, it runs 70 miles before crossing the border into Iowa, south of Jewell, the county seat. It's a lovely river filled with water that's only slightly silted, making it the color of weak tea. Most folks who've grown up in Black Earth County have swum in the river, fished its pools, picnicked on its banks. Except in spring, when it's prone to flooding, they think of it as an old friend. On quiet nights when the moon is full or nearby, so on the surface of the... Let me try that again. On quiet nights when the moon is full or nearly so, and the surface of the alabaster is mirror still and glows pure white in the dark bottomland, to stand on a hillside and look down at this river is to fall in love. With people, we fall in love too easily, it seems, and too easily fall out of love. But with the land, it's different. We abide much. We can pour our sweat and blood, our very hearts into a piece of earth, and get nothing in return but fields of hail-crushed soybean plants, or drought-withered corn stalks, or fodder for a plague of locusts. And still, we love this place enough to die for it, or kill. In Black Earth County, people understand these things. If you visit the Alabaster at sunrise or sunset, you're likely to see the sudden small explosion of water where fish are feeding. Although there are many kinds of fish who make the Alabaster their home, the most aggressive are channel catfish. They're mudsuckers, bottom feeders, river vultures, the worst kind of scavengers. Channel cats will eat anything. This is the story of how they came to eat Jimmy Quinn. Now I know you want to read this book because that's awesome, right? You need to go read this book. So the atmosphere, as you can also tell from that passage, is just fantastic. I have spent in my life a lot of time in Minnesota, not really in this part of Minnesota, but I feel like I've been there reading this. I see so clearly the town of Jewell and its inhabitants and this river. It's there. Like when I open this book, I go to Jewell, Minnesota, because the atmosphere is so beautiful. The characters, as I highlighted 3 of the characters, but there are a lot of characters in this book, and William Ken Krueger takes the time for us to get to know all of them. Even some of, I would say, kind of like the second tier characters, the ones who are really supporting characters, you don't get to know their life story. You don't need to know their life story, but you get to know them enough that they are human within the pages of this book. And then, of course, because this is a literary mystery, also being historical fiction, the plot is important. It's a good mystery. The pacing of this book is really effective. Like when I got about this far, like I could not put this book down. The speed, like my whole body just sped up with this book, which is interesting because the book is, for a large part, it's very languid, like the river. But then they talk about the river can be violent, like in the spring when it floods. You start getting that uplift, like in the writing, like you would with the river. The other thing I found really interesting about this book is it does, I mean, and you could probably get this from the summary I read. This book is evocative, or at least it put me in mind of To Kill a Mockingbird. Now, this tender land is very reminiscent of Huckleberry Finn, and William Ken Kruger does even talk about that. Like his original intent was to do a retelling of Huckleberry Finn, so it's pretty clear there. Here, it's not so forward, and honestly, the message of this book is different than To Kill a Mockingbird, so it's just sort of like a whiff. It's a whiff of To Kill a Mockingbird. And I did a really quick search before I started this video to see if William Kent Kruger had said anything about that. And in the articles I scanned, I didn't see anything specifically that he tried to employ To Kill a Mockingbird in this book. But he has said in many, many interviews that To Kill a Mockingbird is his favorite book. So it makes sense that you would kind of get that. Now, I'm not trying to compare the two books. I'm just saying that, To Kill a Mockingbird had a message, and this has a message. They're two different messages, but there's some commonality between the two. There are a lot of themes in this book. A lot of these characters have trauma in their past. I talked about Brody, who's a World War II vet. He is not the only vet from World War II or Korea. In this book, the scars of war are there on his soul and on the soul of a lot of characters in this book. And it's really interesting because this is the third thing I've experienced recently that really talks about the trauma from World War II. The first was The Postcard by Amber Rest, which I also gave 5 stars. And then I saw A Haunting in Venice, where there's a character who's really dealing with a lot of that. And then this. So it's just interesting how that keeps popping up all of a sudden. But there's also a big part about this book about telling your own story. Because these people have some trauma in their lives, and it's different for different people, there is a healing in sharing their own story, and you don't get the stories right away. They are just meted out very carefully throughout the book, and the world opens up a bit more with each story, and the characters are able to start their own healing process with each story. And just the power of storytelling I found so moving in this book. It's not an unknown topic to William Kent Kruger, but I think this is his most articulate attempt, or his articulate portrayal of it. And I love the community of Jewel, Minnesota. Not everyone there is likable, not by a long shot, but this is a community. It has its problems. It has its evils in this community, but it is still a community. And it's the sort of community where things come together when it needs to. But it also comes apart at the slightest provocation. As I said, I've spent time in Minnesota. I've spent time in small town Minnesota. And this is a very, very typical small town Minnesota community, which is not surprising because William Kent Kruger is a Minnesota writer. He actually grew up, or he spent high school in Oregon, but as an adult, he has lived in Minnesota. So almost all his books are set in Minnesota. So let me tell you what I didn't like about this book. Abso-freaking-nothing. That's what. If I had to find one thing I didn't like about this book, it's that it came out in September, and I wish it had come out in early summer, because then it would have been the right time of year for it to, you know what I mean? Like the time of year it was released to the time of year it was told. Obviously not a problem with the book, but I needed something to say in this section. So I will say, I wish it had come out in May instead of September. So, yeah, this was a 5-star book, as was this. And as was, moved my camera. As was this, and as was this. So the question is, I have 3 5-star books here. which is the most 5-starry of these 3 books? This one is. This is the best of his standalones. Earlier this year, I was able to kind of attend a interview with William Kent Kruger online, and he was asked, you know, what do you enjoy writing more, your Cork O'Connor series or your standalones? And he said the standalones. Cork O'Connor is his job. His standalones are his career. And you can tell. And that's not to say don't read Cork O'Connor, because Cork O'Connor is awesome. But his standalones are fantastic, and they just keep getting better and better. And I'm almost scared of what his next one will be. So, because this one was so good. So, go read this. If you've never read William Kent Kruger, you can go ahead and read this. There's no need to read any William Kent Kruger. My only warning, if this is your first one, is that this is the best, and the other ones are only, you know, fabulous instead of absolutely magnificent. So, but other than that, read this book. 5 stars. The River We Remember by William Kent Kruger. Thank you. And if you made it through this video, please go to bookshop.org and buy, or go to your bookstore and buy The River We Remember, or reserve it from your library. But before you do that, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.